What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. What is going on, everybody? Happy Sunday night football. Happy 10 wins if you're the Green Bay Packers, and not a happy night if you're Seattle. Geno Smith gets injured. Backup quarterback comes in, looks atrocious, and you kind of get worked. So we will dive into the Sunday night game. A lot of other stuff going on, too. I want to dive into, McCarthy, is he keeping his job? Something I saw today with Tua. Jerod Mayo, is he going to keep his job? The Eagles, the Dan Campbell onside kick, John Lynch. I don't know if he tried to fight De'Vondre Campbell, but he definitely came down on the sideline on Thursday and told him to go to the locker room. So we'll hit on a lot of we got major injuries. We got TJ Watt, we got Surtain, we got Mahomes. They got 2 games in 10 days now. Is he going to be available? Obviously, Geno situation, the Lions. Saw Schefter just Instagrammed before I hopped on here that the Lions might have lost a corner, and we know they lost McNeil in the game, Carlton Davis too. They are just getting destroyed by injuries. It's insane. So we will dive into all this, but before we dive into some football, if you want to go to a game, if you want to go to a concert, my friends, my partners, they got you covered Game Time. They are the official ticketing app of this podcast. Any event, you name it, a game. Who plays this week? 4 college games. If you're a Notre Dame fan, if you're an Ohio State fan, if you want to attend one of these games, if you want to go to one of the big bowl games, you want to go to a playoff football game, the Christmas is right around the corner. It's an easy gift, pair of tickets, something in 2025, have under the tree or under the candles, my Hanukkah brothers and sisters. Anything you need, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code JOHN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. Create an account, redeem the code JOHN for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. I think a couple weeks ago, Stuckey said something on the podcast that I thought was just something that was interesting, because I sometimes don't look at it this way. Because we always talk when there's a transaction, right? When a player leaves a team and goes to a new team, when a coach leaves a team and goes to a new team, how is that coach or player doing for their new team? What is going on? Is he having success? Is he not having success? All these guys that are about to get jobs in the NFL, how will Ben Johnson do as coach of X? How will Mike Vrabel do as coach of X? And Stuckey's like, well, look at when Mike Macdonald left the Baltimore Ravens, what happened to the Baltimore Ravens defense. It was statistically one of the great defenses of all time last year. And this year, minus the Giants game, it's been mainly atrocious with the same players. Same thing with a guy like Aaron Rodgers. Gets traded to the Jets. I'm guilty of this. I went, the Packers are screwed. There is no way Jordan Love is going to be good. When does that ever happen? Favre, Rodgers, Love? It's like the only time I can think of anything even remotely close was like Montana, Young, Garcia. And obviously Jordan Love, we'll get into him in a minute, I think is a stud. And the Packers now have 10 wins. Last year they have 9. They won a playoff game last year. They are going to be a very, very feisty team come the playoffs this year. They're a real deal. They haven't flinched at all. I mean, so separate from Rodgers' up and down situation, his injury, his up and down play, like they don't even think about him, right? Where the Ravens would do anything to have Mike Macdonald back. Look at who Mike Macdonald replaced in Seattle. Seattle Seahawks. They have basically been the same team, give or take, for like the last 6 or 7 years. Win 8, 9, 10 games. And when they essentially fired Pete Carroll last year, it's like, it's going to be hard to replace a guy like Pete Carroll. One of 4 guys, Super Bowl, national championship, obviously is a high-level coach. They're no different. And it's not like, listen, I think Mike's good. Smart move. It was the right move. But I think you saw tonight, it's like, Geno's kind of just a guy. I would want to play Geno in a big game, and I stand by that. But watching that game once Geno hurt his knee and them throw in Sam Howell, it really brought to light that Geno's pretty good, and that offensive line is atrocious. And one underrated aspect of Geno is he can move around, right? We see it with Jordan Love. A lot of Jordan Love's game is a lot like Aaron Rodgers. He can, when he was younger, can move around and make plays. Sam Howell is like the smaller guy who can't really move and was just getting destroyed play after play after play. And then when he actually made a throw down the field, felt like it went right through Green Bay defenders' hands half the time, and some of them were caught. It was like, Jesus. Kind of brings to light, like, Geno's pretty important. And I've been a big believer that, like, it's time. Seattle, cash in your chips. Make a huge trade. Go get your Mahomes. Go trade up to try to get your Josh Allen. Now, it's easier said than done. Who is Mahomes and Josh Allen in this draft? But just do something aggressive. I thought they should have attempted something like that last year. Go up and get Michael Penix. Hell, you just hired his offensive coordinator this year. Now, they haven't done it because your guy stinks, and you're watching him like, he's not bad. Kind of understand why you like him. Because he could just keep you around 8, 9, 10 wins. And as we watched, anyone that watched football this morning, for me, it was 11 a.m. kickoff. A lot of shitty teams. From the Jags to the Giants to the Dolphins. Just a lot of bad football. A lot of bad football teams. And you go, as long as we got Geno and some of the talent with John Schneider and Mike McDonald, we will be competitive and we will have a chance at the playoffs. And I would imagine 35, 40% of the league would sign up for that yesterday for 2025. And that's the position that that Seattle will be in. But it was very evident tonight because, well, listen, they were getting their ass kicked. Green Bay showed up to win. Green Bay was really impressive. Now, rightfully so, they had a little extra bye, and they came in swinging. Hell, I was recording with Coward, and by the time I got out to the living room, 7, 8 minutes, into the first quarter, they were already up 14-0. And I had to look, at halftime, like what happened. Obviously, first drive, touchdown. Force a punt, next drive, touchdown. It's like bang, bang, boom, you're up 14-0 on the road. And the game, in a weird way, was kind of decided from that point because they dictated the terms of the rest of the game. They dominated the first half. I mean, dominated the first half. Right? Up 17-3, but it felt like 30-3. And the second half, the moment Geno was hurt, if Josh Jacobs doesn't fumble the ball, that is not a game. Because, and listen, I thought Seattle was good in the second half. They couldn't do anything in the first half defensively. They were getting smoked left and right. And in the second half, Leonard Williams feels like one of the more underappreciated players in the NFL. That guy is a stud. That guy could play for my team any day of the week. And their defense was just much more physical, stopping the run, hitting guys, forcing the fumble. But offensively, they had nothing. And, that fumble led to a Charbonnet big run, was a big moment in the game. But other than that, like, Seattle had no chance. And to go on the road like that in Green Bay, and listen, I'm a Jordan Love stan. I think that's what the kids say, right? I'm a sucker for talent and the arm, the movement. Now, listen, the fundamentals great. Throws on his back foot a lot, but throws absolute BBs. And when he's on, his touchdown passes are as beautiful as they get. That's what I want my quarterback to look like. Movement, scramble ability, sit in the pocket and throw a seed 20 to 30 yards down the field. Obviously, Green Bay, and this gets back to the Rodgers thing, when he had a big issue with Gutekunst, it's like this situation where they're at is really a testament to the organization, how well they build teams. Like all those young wide receivers, I mean, they traded Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers in a 12-month span, and 2 years later are probably going to win 12 games. And you watch, like, how many teams in the league with a young offensive roster would you take over theirs? It has to be on a short list, right? But their general manager, and sometimes you got to make, let's face it, their organization, at least in the last 20 years, is defined by making quote unquote controversial picks at quarterback. They did it with Rodgers when they drafted him 24th and they had Brett Favre. And they did it again with Aaron Rodgers when they took Jordan Love, who I think was picked 27, either 27 or 29, but one of those two picks. And everyone freaked. And I'm sure, I was in college with Rodgers, but this one I thought was crazy too. And several years later, it was 100% the right move. And now the Packers are in a position because they also fired Mike McCarthy, who we'll get into in a second. It's a really good coach who knows what he's doing, and hired a guy who's excellent. And obviously, Lafleur was a part of the Jordan Love pick as well, because you're not going to draft a quarterback with an offensive coach without having him on board. And the development and the coaching, to me, Jordan Love is everything I want in a quarterback prospect, especially when he's a raw project, right? From the size, from the arm strength, from the movement ability. You don't need to be Lamar Jackson or Kyler Murray, right? But in this modern day NFL, and you saw it today with the Lions, and listen, Jared Goff was awesome. I think he threw well over 400 yards. I didn't see his final numbers. I think 5 touchdowns. I think Schefter wrote he threw 5 picks and lost. He threw 5 touchdowns and or five picks and won, 5 touchdowns and lost. But Rodgers loves everything I'm looking for, and the organization believed in it and they bet on it, and now they're benefiting from it. And from an intangible standpoint, we saw him get hurt. We saw him battle through injuries. We saw him play injured. Obviously, by all accounts, he's a super high character, good guy. You are so lucky to be a Packer fan. I mean, seriously, this has been going on. No matter what age group you're in, if you're 50, it's basically your whole life. If you're my age, basically your whole life. If you're 20, it's all you know. If you're 28, all you know. You have to be 60 to really, truly probably remember the tough times in the 70s and 80s. Other than that, your football life is fucking incredible. It doesn't get any better. It doesn't, and part of being an incredible football life doesn't mean you win the Super Bowl every year. Hell, you guys have won 2 since Favre showed up. You've only been to 3, but every single year, a little like the Steelers, but the differences between you and the Steelers, they're kind of winning now. It's not quite the same as when Big Ben was in his prime. I mean, you saw Russell today without Pickens. Looked a little meh. Listen, sometimes your defense over the last 15 years has let you down. No one's ever questioned the quarterback or the offensive prowess. And now, new group, just like it always was. Donald Driver got old. Then Jordy Nelson got old. And then Devontae Adams left. And now you got Dobbs. You got Reed. You got Watson. It's oh, yeah, we'll also add Josh Jacobs, right? We know you draft good offensive linemen. And now you have this quarterback who is, 26, 27 years old, and is just fucking awesome. And listen, he throws some picks. I say this all the time with interceptions. I got no problem if you throw interceptions, as long as you throw a lot of touchdowns. Favre threw interceptions. Hell, Peyton Manning threw interceptions. They threw a lot of touchdowns. And that's what this guy does. He's an explosive player down the field. So I just think your organization, even look in your division. Gutekunst has been there forever. Before that, Ted Thompson had been there forever. Your success always comes with high-level offensive coaches. In the 90s, it was Holmgren. In most of the late 2000s, 2010s, it was McCarthy. And now it's Lafleur, who's going to be there for a long time with his quarterback, Jordan Love. And I just think, you look at your division, the Lions are having a fantastic season, which is kind of falling apart because of the injuries. When I say falling apart, I just mean big picture, how are they going to keep this thing together? But we're going to learn over the next couple of years, what's it going to look like when Dan Campbell loses his coordinators? It's impossible for you to lose your offensive coordinator. The Bears are a joke, right? The Vikings are having a fun year, but they got a big quarterback question this offseason. What do they do? What are your question marks? Seriously, we just need better personnel, keep drafting defense. I know you can build the offense. Now, big picture this year, can they win the NFC? I think they can go toe-to-toe with anybody. I mean, clearly they have been in a lot of big games. Last year, they went toe-to-toe with the 49ers. They easily could have won that game on the road. Tonight, I thought, was a pretty big gut check game on the road. Their fans travel exceptionally well. Seattle, for the last decade plus, has been one of the better home field advantage, and they're chanting "Go Pack Go" during that game. And how are you supposed Most teams, I say this all the time when people get bent out of shape about their DBs, most teams maybe have one good corner. If you're lucky, you got two. If you have three good corners, meaning your nickel as well, like you're living a first class life. So when you have that many wide receivers who can all do different things, who can all, it feels like, run. I mean, Watson can fly. Even Reed on the one that Love, they ended up getting stuffed on the fourth down, but on the third down, he's wide open there. And Love just threw a seed, he just slipped. They're good route runners, they're good playmakers. Your tight end's a stud. He had a sweet catch today on a classic like Rodgers, one of those guy jumps off sides. I feel like Jordan is a carbon copy of his movements, his mannerisms, the flick of the wrist. That play when they snap it, same thing Rodgers would have done. Like him sitting for those several years, which never happens anymore, and rightfully so. If I'm a fan, if I'm a coach, if I'm an owner, we don't got 3 years, and usually we don't have Aaron Rodgers. So it's just a situation that's very, very rare. Like those days are done. And honestly, it didn't even happen that much way back in the day. Like it was unheard of when Carson Palmer sat for a year in like 2002 behind John Kitna with the Cincinnati Bengals. But this guy's welcome to the NFL moment, sitting, learning from Lafleur, learning a complicated offense, and then getting to kind of ease into it in a weird way, but peak at the right time. And now you watch him right now, just like last year. When did he peak? End of the season. When's he playing good football? Right now, into the season. My only issue with them last week in Green Bay is they started slow. Once he got into a rhythm in that second half, it felt like every single drive they were going to score. Because, like, what are you going to do? They can run an out route, get a first down. They can run a go route, get a touchdown immediately. They can do something over the middle of the field, and the guy can break another 20 yards. They can bust an 12-yard run any given play. They can hit the tight end down the seam at any moment. Like, they kind of got it all. And when you get them in a situation like tonight and they get some rhythm and moving early in that game, like, Jesus. And then they just, the defense, Halfley's good hire. And I think a lot of people made a big deal. I was thinking about this the other day. This is what I think about when I'm like in the car driving around. Is everyone made a big deal? It's like, Halfley, he left Boston College to be a defensive coordinator. Well, I don't know exactly what Jeff Halfley was making at Boston College. If I had to guess, let's say he was making $4 million. Well, let's say the Green Bay Packers call him and say, because Jeff Halfley probably knew, decent chance I get fired in a year if we don't win. Well, hey, we'll give you a 3-year, $10 million contract. So you take a little haircut. Well, when you factor in the taxes, the cost of living and everything, the money isn't that much different. And I'm giving you extension from where you have. And I'm putting you in a position where a team's going to be good. If it goes well, you can then become an NFL head coach, let alone get a better college job. So I think everyone freaked out about Jeff Halfley leaving. It's not like he was taking $10 million and the Packers offered him $2 million. That's not what happened. Financially, my educated guess, probably not a big difference if there is one at all when you factor in everything. And honestly, it wouldn't shock me if he makes the exact same that he made at Boston College. But that's a good hire. And he got a lot of shit last year because he kept Joe Barry around. And that's the hard part about football, just like any company. When you hire a friend and you're the boss and it's not working out. Now, it's no different. I have a lot of friends that own small businesses that have or had partners where you have to break up. It's tough. These aren't easy situations. But most of those in our society aren't public. Besides like your close friends, the people you work with and your family, you don't really know about it. Right? We're at an NFL team, like everyone kind of knows about it. So it's under a magnifying. Last year, Sirianni, one of the coaches he fired when the Eagles fired a bunch of their staff, was the best man at his wedding. I mean, you get these jobs, you bring on your friends or people that you believe in or close with. Like, I don't blame you. I would do that too. You need people you can trust. It's why it took Sean McVay so many years to name Chris Shula, who's not some random, who's been coaching for a long time in the NFL, whose dad was a coach and grandpa was Don Shula, to name him the coach. Because he's like, listen, we've known each other. We play college football together. And I don't want this to be weird. And if it goes wrong, like ultimately I would have to fire you. And you can be put in a weird situation really, really fast. And it's working. He fired his buddy, Joe Barry. He hired Halfley, which I don't know how well he knew him. Halfley had worked under Kyle for a couple years. So there was a lot of LaFleur's brother was on the Niner staff, so there was connection there. Maybe they worked together in Cleveland for a bit. I'm not sure. I have to relook at that. I don't know if Hafley ever worked in Cleveland, actually, so don't quote me on that. But it was a good move, and Seattle ultimately screwed. I think if Geno's out for any foreseeable future, um, yeah, it would just be a wrap. Nothing you can do. So Seattle plays Minnesota next week. I think that's a loss. Then they go to at Chicago and at the Rams. Uh, I could easily see them losing 2 of 3 games, finishing 9-8, and missing the playoffs. Because now with Washington winning, which they easily could have lost, when Spencer Rattler led them on that game-winning drive, and then they went for 2, which is the right move. My only issue with the 2-point play in that game is when you run a 2-point play, and I'm not trying to act like I know better than these offensive coordinators, but it's just basic math. When you're at or in the red zone, but just at a 2-point play, you're at the 2-yard line, you only have so much room to go, right? So the field is a lot wider than it is long. So when you run like a quick, like a rollout, sprint out play, not only do you not have that much field to go lengthwise, you cut half the width. So your margin to throw is not that much. If you run that play at the 50-yard line, I can always stop, throw across my body, maybe run back. I can't really do much on a 2-point play in that situation. They ran it out and the guy wasn't really open. I just think you limit your option. Now, maybe they felt that was one of their better 2-point plays, but long-winded way of saying, like, I almost called them the football team. I think I read that the Redskins might be coming back with a name, but they're the Commanders right now. They're the only team that's had like 7 names in 4 years. But that's a huge win because they basically feel like a lock to get to 10 games. And if they get to 10 wins, they will just be the 7th seed. Now, I also think that's a huge advantage to whoever the 2 seed is, which, feels like the winner of Minnesota, Detroit, or Philly. We'll see how this plays out. But you get Washington, like they're 1 and done. And you had to play Green Bay or Minnesota, the Lions. Like that's a different animal at the 5 or 6. So, yeah. Seattle, I think they've definitely made progress. They feel like a better team than the last couple years with Pete Carroll, but they're getting the same result. And I think you saw tonight for a half. I don't know if that's totally on Geno. Their offensive line felt, and it wasn't exactly Reggie White and Gilbert Brown were up the middle, though Green Bay's got good defensive players. They were just overwhelming them every play. They had no shot. Sam Howell looked like me back there. He looked small, and he just crumbled like a cookie because they were coming from to attack him from every angle. He had nowhere to go. And one underrated part about Geno is Geno can move. The Geno is not Kirk Cousins or Jerod Goff. Like he's a good athlete. He throws well on the run. And a lot of Seattle people were tweeting at me like, John, like that's a huge Geno masks a lot of our problems with our offensive line. So congrats to the Packers organization. Just keep on rolling down the tracks. Meanwhile, Rodgers and Devontae throwback game for what the 4th win of the season, 3rd win of the season, 4th win of the season, whatever. The Jets stink. The NFL season is rolling along, and the contenders are separating from the pack. The one thing that hasn't changed this season: DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and it's the #1 place to bet touchdowns, long bombs, fades to the end zone, big runs. You name it, we do not care how you get them. We just want to bet touchdowns at DraftKings, and it's the best place to do it. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like a player scoring a touchdown. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your first pick. Here's a reason for new customers to do a touchdown dance on their own. Bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code JOHN. That's code JOHN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets. If your bet wins, just bet $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Let's go through some other things. I think a lot of people thought Jerry was just being Jerry when he threw out that Mike McCarthy could easily get an extension several weeks ago on his radio show. And in fairness, I don't blame anyone for thinking that. Jerry talks multiple times a week and says all sorts of stuff. And then you started watching his team play. And I get like it was the Commanders, it was the Giants, it was the Bengals, and today it was the Panthers. But they have looked really good. And they are a guy who was called up from the practice squad in the middle of the week, screwing up that block punt away from winning 4 straight games. And if Dak was playing the whole time, I'd be like, yeah, you're not getting that much credit. They're doing this with their backup quarterback, who, while he played really well today, has stretches in games where you go, how's this guy in the NFL? And the story that came out this morning with Stephen Jones, I don't know who he said this to, so sorry if I'm not giving you credit, as the big J's say, is that we will entertain everything this offseason because clearly we're all in on Dak and all in on CD, kind of alluding, and he said Micah's name, like obviously Micah is an elite player and good teams keep players like him in-house, but we have to entertain everything financially. I started thinking, what would they get for Micah Parsons? And I think his comp, you watch him today, he looked awesome flying around. And he's been good since he came back. And he's the type player, when you have that type skill as an outside pass rusher, like you're getting 2 1s and a 2. And in their position where they are so devoid of talent, it's tough because the whole point, and I saw this when the Raiders traded Khalil Mack, and financially it was a little different. Like Mark Davis at the time just didn't have the $90 million cash. The Cowboys just basically would be a 3-man team if they did this. Obviously, Jerry has the cash to pay him. But it's a similar thing. The whole point of a draft, beside like drafting to find your star quarterback, is to literally find guys like Micah Parsons or Khalil Mack in the draft, especially when you have a high first-round pick, because that's called nailing the pick. So I'm usually against, like, what's the whole point of this whole thing? But given the way they've built their team and their financial constraints, I think you would have to think long and hard about it. Now, the problem is in this draft, for example, all my buddies say, not a super loaded top 15. This isn't a bunch of Trent Williams and Lane Johnsons and, Nick Bosa's and Jalen Carter's and Aaron Donald's in this thing. I don't think a lot of people view a lot of Micah Parsons in this draft. So that has to factor in. And then you have to look around. Part of trading Micah Parsons, like when the Raiders traded Khalil Mack, is you trade him and that team immediately gives him, a Nick Bosa level contract. So these trades aren't as simple as just trade me for the player, right? I have to trade and have a contract worked out before the trade is done. So me and the team have to agree on the compensation. And then Micah and his agent have to agree on the compensation they're willing to pay him on the salary. But I think they are, and this is what I do appreciate about the Jones family. I think they're being pretty authentic lately. I think Mike McCarthy is going to get extended. Because in what world, if he does well with Dak and does well with the quarterback, and clearly he's a good coach, and I think most universally around the NFL, people that talk about the NFL, people in the league, agree, like, this season's more on Jerry than on Mike. Mike's a good coach. And if you fire him, like, who are you hiring? So I think Mike McCarthy will be the coach. And I've had people ask me, are we sure Mike McCarthy wants that job? Wouldn't he have other options? I think there's something pretty special about being the coach of the Cowboys. It's my issue with Brock Purdy. It's like, Brock Purdy's not taking a discount. Well, Brock, who wants to trade for you? Where are your other options? If we offer you $100 million guaranteed, who's offering you more than that? We'll let you test the market. Have at it. Because I talked to Colin about this, and I was thinking about it during the Sunday night game. When they've had knockdown dragouts with some of their guys, Trent Williams wanted to raise, McCaffrey wanted to raise, but like Debo held out, Ayuk held out, Bosa held out. Teams wanted to trade for those guys. The Jets offered pick 10 at the time for Debo. The entire league would have traded multiple ones for Nick Bosa. They had like 3 or 4 trade offers on the table for Brandon Ayuk. Amari Cooper in a second, straight up. The Pats were like a 2 and a 3. I think I don't exactly know what the Pittsburgh Steelers offered, but they were all offering, and they were offering to pay. Like, who am I bidding against? Like, if I'm Micah Parsons and we're negotiating contract, like, I'm not just bidding with Micah Parsons. I'm bidding against the league if I'm on the fence about, like, would I trade him, because other teams would trade him, and he knows that. But I'm thinking about Brock Purdy, like, who am I bidding against? I can't give you a Daniel Jones. We like you a lot. We want you to be a starting quarterback. We're not giving you Tua or Trevor Lawrence contract. I don't give a fuck what your agent wants to argue. We'll just hang up. We just won't do a deal. Like, who are we bidding against? It was my issue last year with Tua. Like, who are you guys bidding against? Trevor Lawrence, $200 million. Now, there would have been teams before this season that would have gladly traded for Trevor Lawrence based on the hype and based on previous stuff. And that would have been the wrong move, but he would have had a market. That's what I always said about Daniel Jones. Like, who are you guys bidding against? Even Dak. Didn't love the contract. Don't love the contract. But, like, other teams would have wanted him. The Raiders would have gladly taken Dak. The Giants would gladly take him. People want Purdy. People would want McCarthy. You're telling me the Bears wouldn't want Micah McCarthy immediately to work with Caleb Williams, their offense, and just run their team? Would Mike McCarthy be the best coach they've had since Ditka? I mean, what are we talking about? So I think Jerry's no idiot. I was thinking about this watching Tua today. I'm sure, like many people, I've known people that have dealt with addiction issues and been either forced to go to rehab or gone to rehab on their own. And one thing you learn during that process, whether it's a family member or a friend, is like the only way you have a chance to kick whatever you want to kick or whatever you need to kick to keep your life going, essentially, is you have to believe it. Like, you have to believe it's time to change. You have to want to change. And listen, I've never been an individual that struggled with addiction, so that push and pull inside, I can't imagine what that's like for an individual, but it's pretty clear. Like, if you want to change, you have a chance for rehabilitation to work. But if you do not want to change, it usually doesn't stick, no matter how high priced whatever center I send you to. It ain't going to stick long, and you'll just fall right off the wagon and go back to exactly who you were. I was thinking about this today, kind of a crazy analogy given that I'm talking about a guy with concussions, but Tua Tagovailoa today, I'm watching the game, like 10 games going this morning. Most of them were god awful. Honestly, the best game of the morning was really the Jets or the Jags. But I'm just kind of hate watching Texans Dolphins. I despise the Dolphins. I don't like anything they stand for. You know, with McDaniel, the franchise, the team, the way they've built this team, the money they invested in their quarterback. I can't take any of it. But I do respect Tua's love of football. And when every human being told him to quit and retire, he's just like, fuck you, it's my life. And I respect that. I think the same way. Like, don't fucking tell me what to do. Leave me alone. Whether he's right or wrong, like, it's his decision. It's not on me or you or anyone else, his coach, his owner, whatever. It's on him. It's him and his family's decision. But if he's going to play, like, you kind of got to be smart. And you're not exactly Lamar or Kyler. So when you run around, like, you got to be extra careful. And there was a play today where he was diving for a first down, which ironically would not have counted because there was a holding and he got a 10-yard penalty. But there were two defenders, bearing down on him against a pretty physical defense in Houston. That's a team, when you watch the Texans, who have underwhelmed a little bit this season, which they ended up clinching the division on December 15th. We're coming right for him, and he dives headfirst for him. And he gets cracked by two guys. And it's like, listen, maybe he in theory wants to change, I guess. But you watch him play, he hasn't changed at all. There was a play earlier when he came back about him attempting to make a tackle. Today, there was a similar opportunity on one of his interceptions that he pulled up. But that play, it's like, he's just going to play like he plays. And maybe in this scenario, there's nothing he can do. It's like muscle memory, right? You just get out there and play. You're not even thinking. You're just reacting, which is ideally how any coach wants a football player to be, right? Is not thinking, because the moment you think, you play slower. So I want you to play, and maybe this is just embedded in his body. But, like, it's going to happen again. It's not avoidable if he's going to play like this. No matter how soft and how many regulations have come in that we want to change the rules, people still get destroyed. There was a dude in that game on a ball. Was that game or was it the Indy game? Yeah, it was the Dolphin game. Dude came over the middle, cracked, had to be carted off. I mean, it was a tough scene. It looked like they had to cut his pads off. He was shirtless on the gurney. Like, God, I hope he lives. It's a violent game. People run really fast. All these guys, All the defensive linemen are 280 to 340 pounds. They all are elite athletes. Most linebackers now are not like 260 pounds anymore. They're like 235, 240, and they all run 4.4s and 4.5s. Every DB is hauling ass. They have 0% body fat, and they're all muscle. And the overwhelming majority of them will lower their shoulder and fuck you up. So it's like, if he's going to play, like, we just have to acknowledge, like, at any moment it's going to happen again. And, like, I'm just not making a big deal. He wants to play. It is what it is. He's not really changing. Maybe he can't change. But just get ready for it. Can I tell you about my friends, my partners, and just a company that I wear every day, True Classic? It's hard for me to find t-shirts that I like. I don't want to think too much in the morning. I basically have my version of the Jim Harbaugh outfit. I like grabbing the same thing after I work out in the morning, and I wear the rest of the day if I'm working. And that's where True Classic comes into play. They sent me originally a 6-pack of just varied colors. I was like, I really like the way these t-shirts feel. I need more for myself. So what I did is I ordered a 6-pack of short sleeve grays. I ordered a 6-pack of short sleeve black t-shirts. I wear them to podcast basically every day. If I'm going out at night, throw this bad boy under a pullover, dressed up, ready to roll. Date night, happy hour, you name it. They fit great. They're comfortable. I've been blown away by these guys. The premium products at an affordable price. That's the key. And we know how much things cost in this day and age. Well, that's where True Classic, with their 6-pack, have you covered. Active callouts, moisture wicking, quick dry and odor control, mix and match clothing to work your lifestyle. That's definitely what I do. So the holidays are here. And True Classic's ultra comfortable, perfect fitting essentials make for the perfect gift for you and the men in your life. So if you're ready to upgrade your closet, shop now and unlock big savings during the huge holiday sale. Just go to my exclusive link at trueclassic.com/JOHN to save right now. That's trueclassic.com/my name, John. trueclassic.com/John. Please support the show. Tell them we sent you. End the year with holiday cheer thanks to True Classic. There's been a lot of stories the last, I would say, week or two about Patriots are cool. Like, they're going to, no matter what happens, they're with Jerod Mayo. Jerod Mayo is going to be their coach. And then there were a couple stories over the last, like, 48, 3-4 days. I was going to do 72. If I was going to 48, how do I do 3 days? 72 hours. The Jonathan Kraft has been calling around that he has taken, and this is well reported last year with Belichick, taken a heavy hand in the organization. And there was a scene today where I forget exactly what happened on the field, but they panned to Kraft, who sits next to Jonathan every single game. It's the two of them. And Jonathan's kind of ranting and raving, clearly pissed off, thinking he has the idea of what would have been a better play. And they were getting housed by the Cardinals, who are not very good. And the Patriots were never in that game. They looked atrocious. And you're thinking to yourself, is he going to survive? Because this organization, the future of it, not just the near future, but the long-term future, all rides on the quarterback. And right now he was an excellent player. He really was. Team captain, leader. Then he becomes a coach. And then last year does shady shit with, behind Belichick's back, whatever. It's welcome to the corporate world. You're always backstabbing, trying to move your way up, be a ladder climber. You get your spot, regardless how you did it. They said they would have hired him 5 years ago. But when he gets a spot, he looks completely lost. Even when Belichick's team last year was atrocious, at least you knew, based on his resume, he does know what he's doing if he has a good team. I would be pretty concerned if I'm a Pats fan. And you have to wonder if, like, they still play the Bills twice. It could, and the Bills, depending on what happens to the Chiefs over these next couple of weeks, there's a lot on the line. So it could get really, really ugly. And you have to wonder, like, Jonathan Kraft is this young, hungry, he'd execute anybody. Hell, he wanted to fire Belichick. It's been well reported 2 years ago. But luckily, Pops, not luckily, I don't really care. I'm not a Patriots guy. But Dad wouldn't allow it. And there's still, I'm sure, a push and pull because it's a family business. But the older Robert gets, the more he gives it to Jonathan. You just have to wonder, is Jerod Mayo safe? Because I'd have to say, you watch his team play today, you're like, holy shit, this is ugly. One thing I would say about Dan Campbell is it's 38-28. His defense is riddled with injuries. Like I don't know what the NFL record is for starters and backups and just high end players getting injured and your team still dominating, but it has to be a pretty small list. It really does. And by today, they lose McNeil, one of their last standing defensive linemen. They lose Carlton Davis, a guy they paid a lot of money this offseason. Campbell said both to probably season ending injuries. Your defense is not going to stop the best player in the league. So my first reaction was like, in what world is he onside kicking? And then I started thinking a little bit like last week, like, what else is he going to do? His defense has no chance to stop these guys. Absolutely none. The only chance he has is maybe getting an onside kick. Now, unlike previous years before the new kickoff rule, you could do a surprise onside kick. So now when you do an onside kick, they're much more prepared. My overall take with an onside kick, when everyone knows it's coming, it just feels so unlikely that it ever even gets close to being recovered. I would say this just gut feel. This just as a football consumer, 90% of the time, it's like easily corralled by the other team. And then there's that 5% where there's one weird bounce, but it's not that close. And then there's that couple percent where it's kind of up in the air, and then the 1 or 2% where it's recovered. Obviously, today it backfires because Mac Hollins is aggressive, takes it, almost scores, and the Bills score a couple plays later. I mean, that final score, 48-42, has to be one of the more misleading scores, I would say, of the year, because it would say that it was an exciting, close game. And for the most part, I did not feel that way. Once you get a big lead and you're scoring every down, you kind of start playing prevent, which is tough because then the Lions are so elite at scoring, and Jared Goff is really good. When you don't hit Jared Goff, he's going to make you pay. When you do hit him, he's a lot like Kirk Cousins. He's a lot like, any pocket quarterback. He's going to be in trouble because he can't ad-lib. So he has to make throws within the pocket. And early in that game, Buffalo was getting after his ass. Pretty sure they sacked him 3 times in the first half. Definitely a couple, and they were just hitting him. And he kind of turned into old average Jared Goff. And then as the game goes on, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but start playing prevent, not being as aggressive, and he starts slicing and dicing you. He made some great plays. I mean, the touchdown he threw to St. Brown over a couple defenders' head. St. Brown took it, was sweet. But Josh Allen was a man amongst boys. And listen, everyone is on their knees circle jerking Ben Johnson. It's like, this guy's the greatest coordinator since Andy Reid, who actually looks really slim, by the way. Look at Coach Reid, the tweet or the Instagram that the Chiefs put out about his postgame. Andy looks great. Bill Walsh, Mike Shanahan equals Ben Johnson. It's like, listen, Ben Johnson's good. We have seen a lot of coordinators over the years be good as an offensive coordinator. There is absolutely zero guarantee that any of that translates. Pat Shurmur was the offensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings with Case Keenum, and they were awesome on offense. How's that work out when he became the head coach? So this notion that he's some lock to be some awesome guy the way he's talked about, it's just not the way coaching works. But why don't we say the same thing about Joe Brady? I'm watching Joe Brady. Ken Dorsey gets fired last year. Ever since Joe Brady's taken over, their running game with Cook has been awesome. Josh Allen, you could argue, not just this year, but even like the last couple games of last year, best player in the NFL. And I never hear his name mentioned at all. Same thing with like Liam Cohen. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, after same thing, everyone, and listen, I get it. A lot of these media guys, they love Raheem Morris, like Raheem Morris, because, McVay and his little cronies, and they all kind of like, they hype guys up. And I get it. Like, if you know a guy, totally understand hyping him up. But like, that fucking thing's a disaster. Even if they win tomorrow against the Raiders, they're still a game back at Tampa Bay, who more than likely are going to win that division and be in the playoffs again. No one ever talks about Todd Bowles. No one ever. All I heard is Raheem Morris for 6 months. I never heard anyone mention Todd Bowles name one. It is amazing, and this happens during the draft as well. In this business, in football, what hype does for you. when you get the hype machine behind you, hype machine. And listen, I'll say this about Ben Johnson's been doing it for a couple years at a high level. So it's deserved hype. But people talk about when he gets a job, it's a lock to work. That's just not the way it works. But some guys, like, it's impossible. What do you have to do to get anyone to mention Liam Cohen's name? It's hard to ever find anyone to be like, you know what, Mike McCarthy's pretty good at his job. Mike McCarthy called good plays. Mike McCarthy's a good offensive mind. I never hear anyone say that. You know, Todd Bowles, pretty good, doing a pretty good job head coach. Pretty impressive. Just deaf. Like, you can't hear anything. But it's happening. Can I tell you about my friends at Via? It's the holiday season. Stresses are high. Sometimes you just need to relax. You don't want to go to the brick and mortar and shop. Well, I got you covered because I've been using these guys. This is my favorite. These Via Elevate. Sometimes I'll be on the couch on a Friday night, on a Saturday, watching a little football, hanging out. Pop one of these. It has 5 milligrams of THC. And the thing at Via is it's well-renowned and ships all over the U.S., but it's known for this. You can control how much THC and how much CBD you want in your gummies. If you are a big THC guy, you can go up to 100 milligrams. If you don't like it, you can have 0 milligrams and have it be CBD only. It's made in the USA. It's award-winning service. I cannot recommend these guys enough. I take these things all the time, and they make me feel fantastic. So this holiday season, gift yourself some pieces of mind. If you're 21 or over, check out the link to Via in our description. Use the code JOHN, JOHN, that's my name, John, to receive 15% off. After your purchase, when they ask you where you heard about them, let them know that it was this podcast and that we sent you this holiday season. Enhance your everyday with Via. This is one of my favorite stories. Is on Thursday, Jake Glazer reported today that John Lynch. So sometimes when a guy gets injured during a game, the trainer or someone down on the field will text up to the GM and let him know so-and-so sprained ankle out for the game, or just update him. Clearly, someone during the game, potentially at halftime, updates John Lynch like, De'Vondre Campbell will not enter the game. John Lynch comes down to the sideline, confronts De'Vondre Campbell, starts calling him out. And eventually, when he went to the locker room, this is Jay Glazer's reporting, John Lynch, Jay's good buddies with John, told him to leave. And something in the NFL, like, listen, most competitive, a lot of money on the line industries, people are going to yell at each other. I kind of like that. Like, sometimes you should be a little uncomfortable in situations. High achievement, like, people should be on your ass. I want people on my ass. It's like part of the way the world works. People should be a little edgy. It's part of life. But in football, most of those people, like bosses in the real world, are kind of small nerds, right? They're not a threat to beat you up. They might be a threat to fire you. They might be a threat to make you pack up your office and leave, which sucks and makes everyone angry and makes you want to fight the guy, but you don't end up fighting the guy. And that guy is never going to fight you. But in football, think how many guys on a sideline, even if the head coach isn't, how many former players are on his sideline. And think about front offices, and I saw it with scouts, a lot of former players are in front offices. A lot of former players, or even just former college players, are general managers. And John Lynch is a Hall of Fame ass-kicking safety. Like, you kind of got to be a little crazy to do these jobs. Now, not everyone, like Howie Roseman ain't fighting Jalen Carter. And listen, I'm not even saying John Lynch would have won the De'Vondre. But, like, part of being good at this job is not just about having the intellectual capacity, being smart, being aggressive, being good at football, being good with people. Like, you got to be a little fucking nuts. And I remember hearing stories when I got to Philly about Andy and a former offensive lineman getting into a shoving match. This is, 20 years ago, in well before I even got there. And listen, Andy never played in the NFL, but Andy in his heyday, big dude, agile, former offensive lineman at BYU. And a lot of these, I remember meeting Jason Light for the first time in person. Like, dude played college football. Like, these guys are big. Most of these, Ozzie Newsome, Hall of Famer, like, this got to be a little nuts. And I just love that. And yeah, I just thought it was a cool story. Other than that, a couple big NFL injuries before we get out of here. listen, I don't have any information beside what has been tweeted out or Florio wrote or said on Sunday Night Football. TJ Watt, foot sprain. If he misses several games, like they'd be in major trouble. They play the Ravens here in 5 days or 6 days. Then they play on Christmas. So if his status is in jeopardy for these games, like they ain't winning games without this guy. This guy is equivalent to their team like a quarterback. Even today, he makes so many he is so good. You kind of realize that if you're a Cowboy fan when Micah leaves, is like there's a big hole and that guy's gone. And sometimes like, is Micah that good? Can he play the run? Then he comes back. You're like, holy shit, we missed this guy. If he has to miss these 2 games, it could be the biggest. It could be the difference, in the division. All of a sudden, they're a wild card team, and they'd be in trouble. Obviously, if he was out for the season, they would immediately be done, and they would be one and done in the playoffs. Surtain, same thing. Like that would be a devastating injury for the Broncos, who had a very very impressive win today against a quarterback who, like I say all the time, can't hit water if he was in the middle of the ocean in a boat. It just truly is an atrocious thrower of the football. Not in terms of velocity, but in terms of accuracy, has no clue where it's going. Surtain, who had I wouldn't say an awesome pick, just a good pick, broke off a route, picked it off pretty easily. Had to be kind of helped off the field. If he has to miss substantial time, that's like their ceiling. And listen, their ceiling fully healthy might just be one playoff victory. If he's gone, that would be a huge, huge blow. Obviously, the Lions kind of feels like they're at the point of diminishing returns. Like eventually you get to the point like things crack. I've been driving around for like a week with this thing flashing in my car about this brake situation. I just hadn't had time to go to the dealership. I've also been on the fence, like it's just time to get a new car when I'm at the dealership, but I just hadn't had time yet. And I'm just hoping like it's something involved with my brakes. Like my brakes just all of a sudden don't work when I'm driving down the highway, and all of a sudden you see a tweet like, former podcaster John Middlekauff has perished because his brakes went out and he flew off the side of the road. That's kind of what I'm hoping, and that's why I need to go to the dealership either Monday or Tuesday. That's what it feels like with the Lions. Like you can lose a couple players if you have some good backups and if your offense is good enough, but I don't know. It kind of just feels like enough's enough, and it kind of feels over. Mahomes, who said after the game that he doesn't even know if he'll be able to go this week, obviously because it's a Saturday game and then he plays a Wednesday game. I think based on the way he was talking, there's a chance he could miss the next 2 games. The great part is they got a little lead. If they just win one of these next 2 games, they'd be fine. Now, could they do that with Carson Wentz? I don't know. But I know this. If there is any question about Carson Wentz, I have a hard time seeing him play Saturday. Because it'd be an easy one, like, hey, don't play Saturday. We'll hold you to Wednesday. So basically, instead of getting, a week off, missing a game, you get 10 days off or 9 days off, and you just start preparing for the Christmas Day game against the Steelers. I could see if he's legitimately not out like 3 weeks or something. But if it's like, you'd be a game time decision Saturday, I wonder if they just say, hey, we'll get Carson to start here on Saturday against the Texans, and then we'll just kind of give you the week. You start preparing for the Steelers on Tuesday or Wednesday, almost like a playoff situation. I wonder if that's in play. And that's where they really benefit from winning all these close games. Because I think it'd be a lot different if they were tied with the Bills or even just had a 1-game lead with the Bills. Because I think it's pretty easy if you're Andy, and this is probably the right move. The Bills are not going to lose another game. I think that's how you would approach it. The Bills are winning out. So they're going to have 3 losses. Well, we got 1. So we can afford to lose 1 more game. Could we just, hey, maybe Carson could, it's not like the Texans are world beaters right now. And the Steelers, who knows? Now, what if TJ's out? What's Pickens' status? They got some major question marks. They're leaking a little oil. So these major injuries are definitely something to keep an eye on. Appreciate everyone listening. Have a great day, and we will talk soon.